It's round number 8 of 45th Chess Olympiad being held in Budapest right now, and we'll start by looking at the match played between Team France, who have Maxime Vachier-Lagrave on board 1, and Team US, who were considered a huge favorite before the tournament started. And on board number 4, Maxime Lagarde was playing against Levon Aronian. As we saw, Levon had a very shaky start. He had some terrible positions in the first couple of rounds, but closer to the end of this tournament, Levon is actually playing quite solid, and he chose to play French defense against Maxime. So bishop g5, and there are multiple approaches. So there is bishop e7, which is one of the moves. There is simple d takes e4, which was played by Levon. So knight e4, bishop e7, takes. That's actually not bishop f6. Bishop f6 is a good move as well, but g takes f6 is actually the main line, and I even have it in my files. And you know what I do here? I usually play knight c3 with white pieces and then try to push d5. There are very long theoretical lines, will not dive deep into it. Knight c3, knight c6, and now knight e2. So another approach here is to play knight f3, and knight e2 looks good as well, but I think there is also some bishop d5. But the more I'm looking at this position, the more I'm thinking what I have in my files, and I don't even remember. That's why I gotta refresh my opening repertoire sometimes. So knight e2 is not a bad move, but knight e2 is kinda passive in terms of you leave this bishop on f1, and now the plan might be to go g3, bishop g2, and then push d5. So a6 is played, g3, yeah, that's what white is doing, and here e5. e5 once again kinda, it looks like black have nothing to do. Elsewise, they'll just, white will simply develop, and, at some point push d5, and it might become very unpleasant. So in that terms, Levon is playing probably the best move. He's trying to, break the center, break the balance in this game. d5. Knight a7, and once again, I'm not sure what this knight is doing here on a7, but knight a5, I still consider it shaky. Let's say queen d3, then long castle, and black. Alright, black have their own plans. They can play b5, they can play knight c4, and position more or less is fine. So d5, knight a7, yeah, passive, but alright. Queen d3, the best move, keeping an eye on b5 square. And so, bishop g2, and the idea is to go for long castle. So queen d6, castle, f5. So here, black can obviously try to play some, bishop g4 and then go in long castle themselves, but no rush with this. f5, h4, bishop d7, bishop h3, and now there are some slight problems with this pawn on f5. After e4, in some lines there is knight d4, and this pawn on f5 might become very, very unpleasant. So knight b5, removing one of the knights, f3, knight c3, knight c3, and rook g8, hitting the pawn on g3. And from this point, white started, slowly collapsing. They played, good move f takes e4, and after rook g3, they played a terrible queen d4 move. According to computers, the best move is to play queen f2 and allow black to play f4. And in this line, black have to take on d7, otherwise this pawn will be taken and black will be actually in huge trouble. So queen d4 is a huge mistake. Yeah, the idea is clear, maybe queen h8, maybe e5 and d6, and it looks logical. But now bishop f6, and I'm not sure what Maxime Lagarde missed here, because now, if he moves his queen back, there is rook c3 or bishop c3. So white played bishop e5. Now bishop e5, rook e1, pinning this. But here, of course, black have good defense. Long castle is coming. Yeah, there is queen e7, but, king will eventually run. Queen f2. So let's say white does something random and play something like king b1. There is king f7 or king f8, which secures a very good position for black piece. Not even castle long, because after castle long, there might be some troubles. Queen a7, even though computer still thinks that after c5, black are in full control of the game. So queen f2 was played, rook c3, computer thinks it's a mistake, but it doesn't seem that bad. And now castle. Bishop f5, queen a3, and from now on, it's just a complete disaster, even though white are up in exchange, because this king is not surviving on d1. Rook d3, bishop c3, brilliant move, and now because rook c3 cannot be taken, because rook d5 will win the queen. So let me show you what happens. Rook d5, queen d5, queen d5, and there are just, even though there is 2 rooks, the amount of pawns we have will just compensate for everything. We'll play queen h5, take on h4, and one of this pawn will eventually promote and black will win the game. Rook f1, queen b1, king e2, queen c2, king f3. I mean, from this point it's just a matter of time when the one will win this game. Although, you know, there are some instances where grandmasters blunder in a very stupid way. King f4, bishop e5, king f5, queen g1. So basically after queen g1, queen g4 has been threatened with checkmate. Then king e6, queen g4, rook f5, bishop d6, threatening rook e8 and rook e7, rook f3, rook d7. So of course why don't go for this, because there is even queen a4 checkmate. And if basically king f6, which was played in the game, rook f6, and here white simply resigned, because let's say this queen f4, rook e5, queen f5 checkmate. And if let's say the only move now is basically queen f7, and of course queen h4, then pick up on f7, and black just have a lot of material. Team USA ended up winning the match 2.5 to 1.5. They're getting closer to the first places. We still haven't seen India versus US matchup, so hopefully that's coming soon. Let's get to the next match between Serbia and Uzbekistan. 2022 Olympic champions were taking on Team Serbia, a very young team, which have 2 Russian-born grandmasters in their rosters. I mean, very solid ones. So, and in the board 1, Nadirbek Abdusattorov was playing against Alexander Predkin. So Alexander plays c4 and Nadirbek plays Karakan defense. And we see the Kara with bishop f5, f5, bishop f5. That became very, very popular these days, and there are some lines for white which are actually really solid. That's why some people actually do not prefer to play the structures, because generally you play very passively from the beginning and you're getting pushed to the your side, and you agree to play passively. So that's why Karo is maybe not the best choice for beginners, but alright, on this level, these people know so much more that basically they can play on, even though sometimes some disasters still happen. So we see g4, early g4. Now with bishop g6, actually white will end up winning the game, because bishop e4, f3, and this bishop is getting trapped. So bishop gotta go back. That's what I was talking about. You agree to play passive. Rook h3, and now rook is going this side. So black need to be very careful. Rook b3, queen c7, g5, g6, and I mean, you already can see. So this knight will have to go through e7, and in order for it to go through e7, black will have to play e6, locking the bishop. So first, Nadirbek needs to get rid of this bishop on d7, because if it's, let's say, this e6, guys, I'm not even sure what I'm seeing here. This bishop is just like, I don't know, just, I want to say bad word, but I don't want to insult anyone. So g6 is played, rook e3, and now bishop goes to g4. That's what I was talking about. This bishop gotta go somewhere else before black play e6. Knight e2, e6 now is played, because bishop will actually be very good on f5, and now the ideas of knight e7, knight f5, this bishop is alright here, because it has this diagonal. f3, bishop f5, b3, knight d7, but once again, now this bishop takes square from this knight, and this knight will have to go somewhere else, like through c8, or if this bishop is getting traded, but I think it's just a dream for black pieces. Knight g3, c5, rook c3, knight c6. And now, after this very smart maneuver, look what Nadirbek is doing. So he plays c5, he frees up a square for his knight on e7. He's not going with this knight on c6, because he gonna do it a bit differently. And now after rook c3, knight c6, he gets rid of the spin and he puts pressure on d4 and e5 center, and now his position becomes very good. knight f5, she takes f5, and unfortunately for white, here they're not able to create anything. Because, you know, g6 at some point, yeah, but, you know, you gotta actually activate your queen somehow to get to the king side. But as we could see, that won't happen. She takes d4, and now Rebecca just up with his free pawn. So knight d7, knight a3, now knight jumps to b5, queen b6, bishop d3, knight c5, threatened bishop on d3, knight b5, rook c8, bishop b2, and as you can see, he's not really rushing with his king, because king actually feels safe on e8 so far. Knight e4, king e2, so we see an absolute mess on this board. Bishop c5, queen g1, and now white are ready to push g6. That's why king f8. So, and what happens if g6 is pushed, you might ask? So there is rook g8, and unfortunately now rook g3 doesn't work as knight g3, and of course g takes f7 won't be available due to rook g1. So rook d1 first, king g7, and now g6. I mean, it might work at some point, but unfortunately all their pieces are located in very bad spots. Rook h2, that's why Alexander is trying to basically go in for g6 anyways. But now look what Rebecca does. He blocks all the way for white to push g6, and this king on g6 is a monster, because it performs the role of a pawn, and the idea is that this pawn can be taken, white are not able to open it up, knight can't jump anywhere, and this king is just very good on g6. But the question is, yeah, alright, it's all very good, right? You might ask, so what's going to happen next? Is, you know, the position is locked, like black are doing something, white are doing something, but there are a lot of ways to actually open up the position, because if the position is open, this king is less vulnerable than this king. So rook e2, king g7, king g2, knight e7, and now knight reroutes. So first knight Rebecca plays king g7, and then he performs this knight e7, knight g6 maneuver. So, and as you might know, as my coach told us, there are a lot of mentions in the books, knight is the best blocker on the board. So rook f1 is played, rook c6, rook f3, bishop b4, bishop d4, bishop c5. So all knight Rebecca is needed is to open up a position. So he sacrifices this pawn on d4 back. After bishop d4, bishop c5, he gets some trades happening on the board. Queen a1, rook c8, queen g1, and now knight c3 is played. Very tricky move. The idea is that knight c3 cannot happen because of bishop d4 and black are winning the piece, and if bishop c5 is happening, then there is that's actually what happened. So not this, and if bishop c3, there is queen hanging on g1. So takes, and now Rebecca has too much pressure. This f4 is a weakness, this h4, this king will, you know, basically protect these pawns and will do nothing. Rook d2, knight b5, he takes b5, and now rook jumps to c3, and now there are also potentially some ideas of a4. Potentially. That might not happen, but let's see. King g3, knight f8, and now knight reroutes, and now a4 is a threat. King d1, a4, rook a8. So here computer says rook a3, and then knight a4 takes, and you know, knight jumps to here or here. So rook a8, rook g2, rook a4, g6, and at this point Rebecca was actually making some mistakes, because Alexander suddenly got huge counterplay. And again, this g6, because g6, so rook a3 here would have gone, you know, a bit more smoothly. But again, rook a3 is a move which probably doesn't make a lot of sense, even for top grandmasters. It's a computer move. But here Alexander suddenly got a strong counterplay, as this rook might come in, so might become very unpleasant. And guys, what happens next is insane. As I said, counterplay, and after rook a2, this rook g2 takes, rook d3, rook d2, rook h3. This is actually a draw on the board. So rook h4 is played, b6, king e8, rook c4. Due to huge rook activity and, you know, potential pass pawn on b6, you know, white are actually good. King f2, rook b1, this, king f7, rook c7, king g6. And you might ask, alright, equal position, this pawn on b6 and this pawn on h4. And guys, if you showed me this position, I would say, how on earth, you know, black can win? So king h5 is played, rook g7, yeah, logical, you restrict the skin on g file, h3, rook g5 is a blunder which loses the game for white. So what they should have done is to play b7, and after h2, of course, there is simple rook, not rook h3, even b8 first, and this king g2, and if rook b2, king h1, and unfortunately this king cannot get any closer, because let's say this king h3, threatening checkmate, bam, king h4, go back, and there is nothing black can do. So of course, you know, they might take a pawn here after rook e8, rook e4, I mean rook e8, and white will simply make a draw. So rook g5, king h4, e7, it's kinda same idea, right? But after rook e7, rook g6, king g1, not king g1 but king f3, rook b3, this, h2, it turns out white are in huge trouble. Because now rook h6 in g4 and rook h2 cannot be taken because rook b2, rook h2, and black win the game, and rook b6, and simply white resigned. You might say why they resigned, because king h2, king f4, picking up on e5, two pass pawns, black win the game. If rook h2, there is rook b2, and once again we're going to the winning pawn endgame as we pick up pawn on e5 and win the game. So just like that, in the one mistake in rook endgame, and white lost the game and lost the whole match, as three boards, second, third and fourth finished in a draw, and this was the only decisive game of this match, which could have finished in a draw and the teams would tie with 2 to score. But now let's get to the board number 1 between Team India, the Invincibles, and Team Iran. Let's go. Finally, last match of this video, India versus Iran. Look, before the match, I thought that, you know, I just want this Olympiad to be interesting, right? I want Team India to struggle for a little bit. I know some of you are watching and you're like, Romka, what are you saying, man? Like, we're Indian fans here. I know, guys, but look, I know this team is just too good. And what they're doing so far is incredible, and this is probably the greatest, you know, performance of the team. And if they will, you know, go undefeated, I mean, I don't know. Going undefeated in the whole Olympiad would be insane, but let's see, this team is capable of doing this. So, Vidit Gujarati was playing against Puya Idani on board number 4, and he started by playing e4. You already see the score. I mean, I had this feeling that, you know, Team Iran might actually do something against Team India, because we saw some surprises at this Olympiad where lower seeds were beating, you know, stronger opponents. But I just don't understand how this team is still, you know, is still not struggling with anyone. c5, knight f3, d6, and we get the English attack. So very aggressive opening choice by Vidit, and you know, that just basically says that we might see a very interesting game. e6, bishop e3, b5, bishop b3, and now bishop b7, hitting pawn on e4. f3, very typical. At some point Vidit of course would go g4, h4 and start attack on king side. Knight e6, queen a2, knight a5, quite typical, maybe trying to go to c4, you know, rook c8, knight c4, or going simple knight b3. That's what black is doing. Bishop e7, king b1, castle, and now g4. And according to computer, the best move here is absolutely insane, mind-blowing knight g4. The idea on knight g4 is simple. After f takes g4, there is b4, hitting the knight on c3, and you might say, and then what, knight a4. But now, look, pawn on f3, which took this knight on g4, no longer protects c4. And now knight, which also protected pawn on e4, now jumps to a4, basically meaning that now pawn on e4 is very vulnerable, and you know, black would just simply take it, then take on h1, and you know, you might say, alright, 2 pieces for the rook, but doesn't matter because here black have too many pawns on the board left. But instead Idani goes for b4 knight a4, and now h4. Vidit is finally pushing for kingside attack. Queen a5, bishop g5. I'm not sure what's going with my mouse, I'm trying to make a move and it just, jumps over to the next one. So instead of going for bishop g5, so yeah, the idea is clear. I mean, why just want to open h-file and, maybe the idea of bishop g5 is also, yeah, it's very interesting, but first probably start with something like queen h2, and after, let's say this, or let's say knight c5, there is bishop g5, because you attack this, and also, you keep an eye on d6, but that was probably the Vidit's idea in bishop g5 anyways, because he wants to go queen h2 next, and, try to hit this pawn on d6. Rook e8 was played, and now, alright, queen h2 is fine, but, bishop f8, and there is, I think, nothing that, white can do here, because bishop f4 would just lose a piece. So bishop f7 takes, and now h5 and h6 is coming. Rook c8, h6, g6, and here Vidit already created some, point of weakness in black's kingside. So queen d2, and now Vidit wants at some point maybe try and hit this and then go f6, g7, checkmate. Knight f6, rook e1, and now at some point the 5 and queen g5 might be very, very annoying. Rook c7, a3, basically pinning this queen on this diagonal. Now knight goes to d7, f4, e5, and now Vidit's position is completely winning. He plays a takes before first. Now there are also some troubles with this queen. Bishop e4, rook e4, queen d5, and now queen d3, basically protecting this. If e takes d4, there's simple rook d4, so black playing knight f6. They don't want to take this knight on d4 as of yet. This queen d4 takes, and now g5. So rook d4 is basically knight g4, knight h6, and black are fine. So of course, first play g5, make sure that everything is stable, and then take on d4. And now, of course, the position is slowly collapsing itself. Rook d6, knight f4, knight c5, knight d6, takes, and rook takes on a6. And even though, triple pawns, and it looks like maybe the position is somewhat equal, because, sometimes, triple pawns basically one pawn on b file, right? So, but in reality, huge weakness on d6, huge weakness of this king, and black are not surviving here. b5, rook c5, b6, rook b8, rook a7, rook b5, rook g7, king h8, and after rook c1, black simply resign because rook c7 is coming, and white will take the whole king side and will win the game. Of rook b6 here, just this, rook b3, and then this, rook g7, king f8, rook h8, checkmate. So, and Team India ended up winning the match 3.5 to half point. Let's see how the situation after 8 rounds looks like. So, after 8 rounds of this tournament, as you can see, Team India 16 points, and then we have two teams, Uzbekistan and Hungary 14. Today Uzbekistan plays India, so that's going to be very interesting, and Team Hungary plays United States on board 2, so that's going to be an interesting matchup. But you know what, the more I'm looking at the table right now, the more I think if India ends up winning today against Uzbekistan, they probably will end up winning the whole Olympiad. Because look, they will have the match with the United States probably, but United States are 3 points behind. So, and we have 3 rounds left, so they gotta win like 3 versus Hungary today, and then versus India, and then hope that the India won't, win against some of other opponents, but it just looks very, very unlikely. So let's see what happens in the next couple of rounds. It's getting closer to an end. I'll see you in tomorrow's recap. Enjoy, watch the Olympiad, subscribe to my channel, guys. I hope you enjoy these recaps. Bye bye.